Welcome to Firm, folks. Mark Merrill here, as always. We're talking about federal laws versus state regulations, fraud. The recent second visit to Maine by Vice President J.D. Vance was informative and certainly promoted a lot of promises to Maine people to clean up the intentional MaineCare fraud and Somali criminal types recruited by the Mills administration. But how much federal action will take place and when? How can it enforce the Maine GOP for governor candidate Bobby Charles and 2nd Congressional District candidate Paul LePage as well? Well, we have a video segment here, folks, from the Maine Wire of John Fetherston asking the Vice President about resolutions to stop the darn thing. Here's that portion.
Fighting fraud for many years here in Maine, and I had the pleasure recently of traveling with Dr. Oz. And I told Dr. Oz that I would follow up with even you. Mainers want to see people held accountable. It's the number one thing that I get. What can you do to tell Mainers that accountability is coming?
Well, I appreciate that question. The question was, how do we ensure accountability for the people who committed fraud? And I do know that the Maine Wire and Paul LePage and really everybody who is a patriot in this community has been on top of the fraud issue, frankly, well before I was. Paul LePage has been the biggest advocate in state or federal government anywhere in the state of Maine at protecting your tax dollars and protecting these programs. It's one of the reasons why we get Paul LePage to Congress. I need help, ladies and gentlemen. You got to see Paul to help. Number one is when somebody commits fraud, they've got to go to prison and we've got to prosecute them. Anti-fraud prosecutions you've already seen, but also at a new, we set up a special position within the Department of Justice, an anti-fraud guy within a deputy attorney general who's just going after fraud. That's his 100% day-to-day job, and we've massively ramped up the prosecution. The second thing you got to do, and this was shocking to me when I started this work, is that if you had low-level fraud in the United States of America, we would largely, it wasn't an official policy, but if you committed fraud of, let's say, $1 million, the federal government would just look the other way. So what we've done is we've said, no fraud is too small. If you are defrauding the American taxpayer, we're going to do everything that we can to put you in prison and send a message to the other fraudsters, the gig is up, commit fraud against America and go to jail.
The Maine Wire.
That is pretty much it right there, folks. That segment, very well done by John Fetherston and the editing over at the Maine Wire staff as well. So that is that presentation. And hopefully, things can change really quick. I mean, we're coming to the end of August and going into September. Labor Day weekend, of course, they call it the official end of summer, but we kind of disagree here at Firm. The warm weather keeps up. That's fine with us, and I'm sure everybody else in the state of Maine as well and around the country. But as we move on, ladies and gentlemen, we have another segment. Now, all Maine citizens, we want you to know, ladies and gentlemen, as you see the pictures here of John Fetherston and, of course, the Vice President, J.D. Vance, there's an additional segment, as we said, with the man on the street supreme, right there, John Fetherston. And he was on recently before going up to Bangor, Brewer area, to attend the speech by Vice President Vance. It was asked by the host, of course, the WVOM radio up there, Rick Tyler, what Vice President Vance is focused on after his second visit now.
I honestly still believe that J.D. Vance is taking this fraud thing very, very seriously. And if you look at what has happened in the past just couple weeks, you had J.D. Vance come in May. I got to tour Portland with Dr. Dr. Oz. I had a long conversation with Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, about fraud, and he brought other congressmen with him. That fraud is the big, big issue in the country. And if the stars all align today and I get 30 seconds with the Vice President, I am still going to challenge the Vice President. Like, when are people going to be held accountable in this state, Mr. Vice President? Because most people are not going to believe it's true until we see these people who steal your tax dollars, and my bigger issue, abuse our most vulnerable people and take advantage of them and physically abuse them and mentally abuse them. And until people see these people held accountable, they don't believe it's real. And it needs to happen. So I'm hoping that's a big part of his key message today, is that and then as you know, Tom Homan was in town recently as well too. So Maine is getting a lot of Washington focus, and some people can say, well, it's to prop up the LePage campaign. Yeah, because LePage is a legitimate candidate, because we need LePage in Congress to bring some balance back. But it's also an acknowledgement that Maine's really messed up, and Washington's aware of it.
John Fetherston of the Maine Wire online, themainewire.com, themainewire.com. Also, Joel is in the studio from the team. When Homan came, and we talked with Mike Sobolewski about it, did you talk with Mike as well about...
I haven't talked, but I've really enjoyed your interview with him.
When he shared the audio, and we did clean it up as best we could, because it was cell phone video taken from so far away, in which Homan said, you know what, I am headed to Maine. And he came on a Tuesday, according to what Tom Homan said. But that wasn't a campaign stop. There wasn't an invitation to the cameras and the microphones. You would have seen it. Tom Homan didn't come in Maine to campaign for somebody.
No.
But
he came here to do his job.
Yeah. But J.D. Vance showing up, and then we get to the idea that, Susan Collins, at least Phil says, oh, she's not going to be there, and I'm drawing a line here. I'm connecting the dots here. And Bobby Charles isn't going to be there, so I'm connecting the dots here. In your opinion, going back to a former influence a few minutes ago, does Republican candidates not choosing to, or not scheduled to, or failing to appear, I don't know, with the Vice President of the United States, does that betray a distancing between that candidate and the Trump administration?
In reality, no, but optics matter. And it would be my opinion that it would be nice to see both of them there today, supporting the brand, supporting, the cause. During COVID, we're all in this together, but we're all in this together, and, party unity is important, and, and I'll say this, Rick, Governor Janet Mills should be there today, in my opinion, as well. I mean, you might not agree with the president or the vice president, but they're the president and the vice president, and this is your state, and you represent the people of Maine, and a lot of people in that room, you represent. So you should be there as well to shake a hand and, do a photo op, and I'm pretty sure she's not going to be there either, and that's disappointing to me.
Janet Mills showing up with the Vice President of the United States, who previously came and highlighted the fraud. Hang on a second, let me play for you something. At the start of every show, we do what's called the agenda. We pull some sound cuts. Let us play for you the one that previewed the Vice President's appearance today, and this comes from the anchor desk, I believe, of WABI TV5.
Number 2. The Vice President will be making his way to Compotech in Brewer, according to the VP's office. Vance made a stop in Bangor in May to discuss what he called fraud in Maine.
What he called fraud in Maine. Now that we have the document from the Mills administration, after you brought Oz here, or Oz came and you hosted him, after we saw what I said was an admission of guilt, look at everything we've done to crack down on this. Why are we still calling it alleged fraud? Why are we still calling it what he says to be fraud? When are we going to just to admit to it and call it what it is, taxpayer theft fraud?
Well, Nora Hogan finally, closer look, taking a closer look. She kind of stumbled on and said, hey, wait a minute, what's this fraud thing? But because they still get their marching orders from the Mills administration. I mean, you saw the video last week when Amy Sussman and Bobby Nichols went to the governor's office, and I'm the guy behind the camera. And I say to Ben Goodman, "Can you give me 30 seconds?" And Ben Goodman's like, "Nope, thanks for stopping by, John. Thanks for stopping." So even the governor's spokesperson doesn't want to talk about fraud because, Rick, if they talk about it, they own it.
Well, I think the document the Mills administration sent out saying, look at all the actions we've taken, was an admission of guilt. And so now, if Janet Mills were in some other world in this cinematic universe, showed up with J.D. Vance, and he utters the topic, it's another admission of guilt.
Isn't it, folks? Pathetic is what it is. We're not playing games anymore, ladies and gentlemen. People's lives are at stake. Elderly, children, grandchildren, possibly great-grandchildren. Billions of dollars that Janet Mills decided that she was just going to shove down our throats. Nothing we can do about it? Bullcrap. It's time for change, and it better happen. Or there's going to be a lot of anarchy. Oh, I'm not issuing a threat, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just being honest. Here's a quote from many statesmen and many, many founding fathers. The First Amendment of the Bill of Rights has many levels of freedoms and rights. The Second Amendment was put next in line to support the First Amendment, no matter what. So to back this one up just a little bit more, folks. So isn't this admission of guilt one thing? But it doesn't hold much water. A corrupt state criminal justice courtroom by a prosecutor. We the people, firm and all law-abiding Americans and here at home, we must, folks, elect the candidates that will restore and reinforce our republic and avoid further damage to our entire country and precious rural states like ours for future generations. Thank you for joining us, as always, folks, here on Firm. Mark Merrill. Check in with us all the time with our podcasts, such as this one right here, on YouTube, X, and Substack. Our website, substack.com @MarkFirmNews1, substack.com @MarkFirmNews1. Email us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. fairnessinreportingmedia@gmail.com, fairnessinreportingmedia@gmail.com. Have a safe rest of your summer, ladies and gentlemen. Peace to all.